Hello everyone, welcome to a quick episode of the MTG Arena Runs Top 10. So today's February, and I'll be honest, it doesn't seem like a unique topic. I've already seen some videos popped out, though I haven't watched any of them yet. That said, it's February. It's actually Valentine's Day tomorrow, so I figured let's do some cards that are actually kind of appropriate for the team. So we're going to be doing the top 10 cards that are kind of sexually suggestive. Some of them most of them are not intentional, let's be honest, though some of them seem to have slipped through the cracks. So let's start with something that's not quite there. Scav Goliath. Well, this one's only here because of the power and toughness combo. This is literally the only card that has this specific combo. So it kind of falls in this category. I would have put this in the top 10, but the more as I dug more and more deeper into this topic, there were more and more cards about this. So Scav Goliath didn't quite make it there, though. Very interesting PT ratio. So good job, you. Okay, number 10. This one is Censorship. This was a card from Unglued. So when Censorship comes into play, you choose a censored word, and whenever any insert expletive here player says the chosen censored word, Censorship deals 2 even bigger expletive damage to him or her. Now the art is now it's censored down here, the illustrator, but the actual illustration is actually from Matthew Wilson. So this was a card from Exodus, and the original card is actually Keeper of the Mind. And as you can see from this playmat version here, that the original art was actually a lot larger, and it even fits the card, except for the fact that they decided to crop it because it's kind of risque below this portion down here. Well, it was the it was close to the year 2000, so we're not quite there yet. As you can see, the signature is 98, so not exactly as open to sexual suggestions as the CW, say, for example. I can kind of remember you can kind of tell the difference between a show like Whose Line Is It Anyway, back when it was that early, and with the modern reboot, you can kind of date a show by how far the censors let you go past with all the innuendos and whatnot. Kind of appropriate for this card. That's Censorship. Now, this one, I seem to save number 9 for cards where I have a little bit of personal history with it. So for me, especially once entering puberty and whatnot, for me, the number 9 would fit the bill. So this was Earthmind. The long wall of text basically translates to enchant creature with flying, and it deals when it enters the battlefield, deals 2 damage to that creature, and an enchanted creature loses flying and cannot gain. Actually, loses flying. Yes, it loses flying. Actually, it's an enchant creature. It's not enchant creature with flying. It only deals damage if the creature happens to be flying. And enchanted creature loses flying and cannot gain flying Earthbind does not affect this. Oh no, it can still regain flying. So, yep. Welcome to the lost art of trying to interpret Oracle text. I probably could have just done a quick search on this. But that said, that was not the important part of this card. It's a decent removal spell, I guess. But what was really important about this one was this harkened back to the day when we just got magic art from almost any place. Well, despite saying that, a lot of the great artists happened to come from that same art college where Wizards of the Coast sourced majority, if not all, of their early magic art. And we're probably not going to see much of this again. One, because Kinton Hoover, rest in peace, and whatnot. But also we're probably not gonna get away with this kind of style doesn't mean we can't get sexy anymore, but but even then we have to use sexy responsibly. Number 8, also from Unglued. We won't get that many cards from the unsets. There's only one more card in the list. Well, there's one more card and there's another throwback. So basically we get 2 more cards from the unsets. But Sex Appeal comes in at number 8. It comes into play as an instant. Basically, it's an instant that prevents 3 damage and can be divided anyway among any number of creatures and our players. Okay, I'll read the original text first. If there are more players in the room of the opposite sex, prevent up to 3 additional damage total to any number of creatures and their players. So this comes into play. It's the only card with the word sex on it. Though there are a few artifacts they're called Barb Sextant, basically nautical equipment that just happen to have the word sex on them. But this is the only bona fide card with the actual 3-letter word sex on it. As for the Oracle text, it's a bit more inclusive now. So it's if there are more players in the room that are of a different gender from you. So basically, as long as they're it's a lot more inclusive. This card still not so great in male. Still not so great if you are in the majority male environment. I think if that's gonna change anytime, it'll probably take a while, given only because the men have been the majority for the longest time. But in some circles, this might get turned around a bit. That said, actually seeing the word sex on the card, it's gonna take a long while. So that's number 8, Sex Appeal. Number 7, this is some Frazzled Editor. So it's a 2/2 for 1 and a red. Has protection from wordy. So if a card has 4 or more lines of actual text, this card has some protection from it. It doesn't count reminder text, if I'm not mistaken. But that said, the juvenile joke here is basically this bad edit here. So the quote is, "The pen is mightier than the sword." But if you remove the space in between pen and is, yes, you can see all the 13-year-olds giggling at this point. But then again, this is pretty much the only way we get the sneak penis in a Magic the Gathering card. So there you go, number 7. Speaking of penises, number 6, Armada Worm. Now, this one's one of the good mythics from Return to Ravnica. So it's 6 mana, 2 green white for a 5/5 worm with trample, and when it enters the battlefield, you create a 5/5 green worm creature token with trample. Now, worms by themselves, they tend to look very draconian, or they tend to look very grotesque. Some of them even have the Dune vibe to it. But that said, the angle, the fact that the Ravnican worms were armor plating, and actually, if you even look at the background on this worm here, basically the angle and the combination. Well, I said, speaking of penises, so. And in fact, if you look at the worm token from Return to Ravnica, it doesn't look much like that. So it's a little bit unfortunate, not intentional, but well, Vulcan Baga, this is going to be the closest to it's going to be closest to a dildo joke, I guess. So number 6, Armada Worm. Again, we're not done yet. Speaking of dicks, and speaking of art, number 5, Ekundu Cyclops. This one's from Mirage. It's a 4 to cast 3/4 Cyclops. If any creature you control attacks, Ekundu Cyclops also attacks at able. Okay, so very reasonable. The thing is, okay, usually when you show this one, most people would be focused on this part here. That's just a loincloth. But if you look at the big picture, again, it's always a case of where it's not intentional. Based on the context mushrooms here, this is probably just a giant mushroom, but again, the weird cropping, strange angle, makes you question what she's riding. So number 5, Ekunda Cyclops. And nope, the jokes are not done yet. We still have one more. Now this one's a bit of a stretch, but actually it's not even much of a stretch. This one's actually a very good card back in the days of Urza Block. It's Stroke of Genius, so it's X plus 2 generic plus a blue mana. It's an instant which makes target player draw X cards. So this is usually a win con by itself. If you remember Urza Block, it was a set that was all about lots of mana, some broken ways to untap your artifact mana sources. So I believe at this time, this was the time when Grim Monolith and Tran Dynamo were on the set. And you also had Voltaic Key, so you could generate a lot of mana and then use the key to untap and whatnot. And there are also cards that allowed you to discard a card to untap one of your lands and whatnot. And you also had Tolarian Academy that produced a ton of mana for every artifact you had. Let's see, there's also things like Lotus Petals and Memory Jars to draw you into more cards. But basically the idea was you generate a lot of mana, and if you've been playing Magic long enough, you know the phrase. You know we tend to use the card name as like a verb, like bolt the bird. That's usually a common phrase, or shock the mana dork, or whatnot, or Doomblade the big bad guy. So here the phrase of choice was that you can stroke your opponent's deck. I'll not say that again, but you kind of get the idea, especially if your opponent's playing a Battle of Wits deck which has 250 cards, so you have to pay a lot of mana to stroke your opponent's never mind, I'll stop there. So number 4, Stroke of Genius, very inevitable, but yeah, that's what happens when you get to play with your opponent's deck. Never mind. Okay, enough talk about that. Now I did say that it's not the end of sexy. So number 3, and Trawling Viktor. I've kind of avoided most of the cards that depicted female sexily, only because it kind of feeds into the horrible stereotype of nerdy boys getting geeky and falling and trawling over the slightest sight of female skin and whatnot. That said, it feels kind of unfair that when it's the beefcakes that are showing up, other people get to gush about it, and it seems to be quite fine. That said, if I were to choose one card that got the most attention and generated a ton of memes, it would have to be this card, Enthralling Viktor. So, also kind of interesting to look at this passerby's reaction. So yeah, it fits the cake. So I guess you can say that it's no longer a boys' club in the sense that being sexually objectified is now fair game to both genders. At least if you can think of the most recent one, it's actually Oko. So that way you can say that, well, at least it's balanced as everything should be. Snap of fingers and whatnot. But number 3, and Trawling Viktor, got a lot of attention this way. I'm not going to even bother reading the card text and whatnot because, yeah, most people didn't. Well, the card was good in its own right. It was a 3/2 that had a built-in threat and effect, but built-in mini threat and effect. But most of the time, people were just distracted up here. This is Sparta. Number 2, this... Oh, hold on. That's a bit too fast. Oh dear, I kind of spoiled everything. Anyway, number 2, Octavio Orangutan. So this one's a card from Vision. So it's a 3 to cast 2 and a green with an ETB effect of destroying an artifact. By itself, it's okay. It's just what happens in the background here. So if you can see here, it looks like there are 2 monkeys that are getting their thing on, and it became. And also, there's the weird flavor text. Is it true that apes wear fur made of gold when they marry? So I guess when you have marriage, when you have love and marriage, then guess what follows up? So the joke continued in Unhinged. There's a throwback with Octabi Kong, but there's even throwback in the art also. So what first comes love, then comes marriage, then comes the monkey waiting to have to buy the baby carriage. So number 2, Octabi Orangutan, and with the follow-up in Octabi Kong, I guess. And you already saw number 1 at this point. Clergy and Vec. Now, looks unassuming until you see the art. It's actually a very unassuming creature. It's a 1 and a white for a 1/1 cleric with a tap effect. Basically, it's a Samite healer. But there's the weird thing about the clergy's face, the odd crop. I'm very sure the guy is just kneeling. But the face, the odd crop, and the quote is, "Fate shield is hammered by the blows of unbelievers." Yeah, it was a perfect storm on the most unintentional card. And even then, the follow-up is also probably unintentional as well when you see Stonecloaker from Planar Chaos. If you look at the arc, it looks like the Clergy and Vec is returning the favor. Oh my. Well, that's it for this quick episode of the MTG Arena Top 10. So again, I'm kind of looking for suggestions for March onwards. I do have a bit of an idea, but if you guys have a better idea, share it and whatnot. As I said, I did skip a lot of the cards that were sexy just because of the art. But if you guys have it, if you guys have anything that's memorable about that's memorable on what the card that caught your attention and whatnot for that aspect, yeah, do share it in the comments and whatnot. I'm kind of curious. What are the cards that would not pass today in MTG art and or grammar and or whatnot? That's it for this episode. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you guys again next time. Well, see you next month with another top 10 list. Take care, and bye bye. Have a great week, everyone.